Hi everybody, it's that time again. It's time for another one of my delicious dishes, and I've had a lot of requests to make banana bread. Apparently a lot of people are having problems with their banana bread. So today I'm making my recipe for banana bread. It's a little different maybe than some of the other recipes you've seen, but it's tried and true and it's wonderful. Once we finally got it figured out, it turns out every time. And I'll explain that later. Okay, so the first thing we need is a half a cup of butter. That's one stick, and that's softened. It's not melted. If you melt it, it will not mix up right. It's just softened. It's been sitting out at room temperature. Okay, and then we need a cup of sugar. Just plain white granulated sugar, and a half a teaspoon of salt, and I guess I'll measure today. I usually don't, but I'll be good and I'll measure. Half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, that goes into your bowl. I'm using my stand mixer, of course, but if you don't have that, you can do this by hand. It just takes a little bit longer. Electric mixer is fine. Okay, so you just turn that on and let it cream. It doesn't take very long. You're just trying to get the sugar to cut the butter to pieces. I mean, that's basically what it does. Okay, so your butter and sugar, let's see if I can get him in the light. There, can you see that? He's kind of fluffy and white. Okay. So once that's creamed, then you add 2 eggs. Now these I've already cracked in a separate bowl. You don't want to get any eggshell in there, and if you have a bad egg, it will ruin your baked goods. So always in a separate bowl. And then you just add these one at a time. Let them mix in a little bit before you add the second one. And then I need a whole teaspoon of vanilla, and I put that in at the same time. There he goes. It smells so good. I love vanilla. It smells so good. Okay. So this just looks like that. It's very yellow. Okay. At this point, take your spatula, scrape down the sides, make sure you get all the butter in there, because sometimes it will cling to the side of the bowl. Okay? All right. So, put that back together. Maybe. Cooperate. There we go. Okay. Then we need a cup and a half of plain white flour, and I only put about half of that in to start with, okay? Because then I have another wet ingredient to add. I need 3 tablespoons of sour milk. Now I don't know about you, but I don't always have sour milk. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If you do not have sour milk, you can use plain milk and a little bit of lemon juice. This is 3 tablespoons, so I'm just gonna put in about like that, maybe half a teaspoon, maybe. And mix that around just a little bit, and it will kind of curdle the milk. The reason you do that is because you're going to put in baking soda. Baking soda is your leavening agent. And that's a teaspoon, so I'll go ahead and put that in right away. The baking soda needs the acid in the vinegar. Okay, you know what happens when you put baking soda and vinegar together? You know, you get the volcano. Same thing. The baking soda needs the acid to react and leaven your bread. It's already in there if you have sour milk. So if you don't, make your own. Otherwise it won't work quite as well. It will still work. Your bread will still rise, but it won't rise as well. Okay? Oh, one more thing. before we throw that all together, is your spice. My recipe calls for mace. No, this is not, I'm going to spray you mace. This is actually from the nutmeg plant. It smells a lot like nutmeg. Nutmeg comes from a tree, and it comes in a fruit. It kind of looks like a walnut. Okay, and once you crack that shell away, there's the seed in the middle, and the seed is the nutmeg. Well, around that nutmeg seed, there is a bright red arrow, bright red, and it kind of wraps around the seed. So somewhere along the line, they found out that if they take this arrow away and we dry it and grind it up, now we have two spices. We have the seed, the nutmeg, and we have the mace, the arrow. Okay? It smells a lot like nutmeg, but a little more citrusy, maybe? Anyway, that's the spice that goes in my banana bread, and that's what makes it so different. This takes a half a teaspoon, and I like my mace, so I make it a heaping half teaspoon. Okay, so that has gone in with my first addition of flour, and I'm just going to let that mix for just a minute and start, and then I'm going to pour in half of my sour milk. Okay, and it comes together nicely. Okay, now my second half of flour. Put him back together. And then the second half of the milk. Sour milk. Okay, now we have a really nice sweet bread at this point, but it's not banana bread yet. Okay, I'm going to scrape down my bowl here too, because I see it sticking to the side a bit. Okay, so now when you make any type of sweet bread, banana bread, pumpkin bread, zucchini, anything like that, you don't want to overmix the dough. It develops the gluten too much, and then you get a tough sweet bread, and that's not what you want. Quick bread, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's just barely together. Do you want to see that? It's just barely come together. Do you see how you can still see some floury bits in there? Just barely together, and that's fine. That's the way it should look. Now, your bananas are very important. First of all, do not use pretty yellow bananas. Use these guys. We all know these guys. They've sat on the counter too long. They're headed south. They need to be used. They are very soft, very mushy. They have a much sweeter flavor than a yellow banana. So use these guys, okay? Not the bright yellow ones. Also, for a long, long time, I just kind of assumed that if I put 2 bananas in, that would be a cup and that would be fine. And I was very wrong. I've been making this recipe for a long time. I got it from my best friend, and she's made it for years too. But the thing we noticed was that sometimes it would turn out perfectly, and sometimes the center would fall in. And we did a lot of talking back and forth and a lot of experimenting back and forth, and what we discovered was that we were both doing the same thing. We weren't measuring our bananas. We were just saying, okay, here's my cup of bananas, dumping these both in and calling it good. That was where we went wrong. When you are using bananas, you have got to measure them. You've got to. I already mashed and measured my bananas for this recipe. It took 3 to make a cup. Now, if you are using frozen bananas, that completely changes the ballgame. Okay, these are fresh. These are going south off my counter. If you are using frozen bananas, that's completely different. You want to thaw them out, and you know how the water kind of comes off of them, drain the water off, then peel them, mash, and measure. What we found out is that if you're using frozen bananas, you will use 4, 5, sometimes even 6 bananas to make a cup of mashed bananas. So, you know, between 6 and 2, that's a vast difference. No wonder our banana bread was falling. Okay, you've got to measure after you mash. Now, it also depends on how ripe your bananas are. These are going to mush up a lot more than, I don't have any yellow ones, but some that aren't quite as black. Okay, these are going to give you better flavor in your banana bread, and you're going to use more of them. If you're using frozen bananas, you're going to use probably double what you will of fresh ones. Okay? All right, enough about bananas. But the moral of the story is you have got to measure your bananas. Got to. We discovered, like I said, we were both doing the same thing. We weren't measuring our bananas. We were just throwing them in and hoping for the best. And we didn't always get the best. Okay, so in go your bananas. You're just going to mix that about that long. Doesn't take long at all. Okay, just till they're combined. And scrape all this off of here. Now some banana breads have cinnamon, they have nutmeg, they have different spices in them. This one just has the mace, and it has such a unique flavor. And I've only had one person say they didn't like it. So I think it's a pretty good one. Okay, just once or twice more around the bowl to scrape all this up. Make sure everything is combined. Now, this is a very thick batter. It is not runny at all. And that is just the way it should look. Okay? All right, now, pans. Ooh, sorry, that was loud. Okay, pans. When you make a quick bread, of course, only spray the bottom. Otherwise, you'll get a fry line around the top. You can always loosen your bread up around the edge with a knife, but if you don't spray the bottom, you're stuck, literally. This is a very large recipe for one pan. I only have one loaf pan that I can put the whole thing in. Otherwise it runs over, and believe me, that's not nice. I've had to clean that up more than once. If you have these little aluminum ones, now this one has been washed several times, so he's not very pretty anymore, but he's still doing his job. If you have these, you can make 2 to 3 smaller loaves out of this one recipe, depending on how full you fill these. Okay, so what I usually do is part in the bigger pan and part in the little pan, because all I have left is one little aluminum pan. The rest of them did their time and they went on. They got a little too crinkled. Okay. Alright, can you see that? Do I need to back up? Okay. So there's that one. And then here's this one. I just split it between the two. Oops, turn. And yes, you're going to have one larger loaf and one smaller loaf, and that's okay. They will both taste wonderful. One will just be done a little bit sooner than the other, which is fine because that means you can eat it sooner. Okay. All right, so kind of spread your batter out. Make sure it gets in the corners. Scrape your spatula off. We all do this with our fingers. I know we do. All right, and tap, tap, tap. Get all the air bubbles out. Same thing with this one. Spread them around a bit. smooth them out. And tap, 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 and this will be noisy, and I apologize in advance. Okay. All right, guys, these are going to go into a preheated 350-degree oven for about 45 to 55 minutes, depending on your oven. This little guy obviously is going to come out sooner than this guy. This one's probably going to be closer to 40, and this one's probably going to be closer to 50. Do the toothpick test on them. You know, stick it in the middle. If it comes out clean, it's done. That's it. Banana bread is simple. The biggest tip I can give you is measure your bananas. Don't take it for granted that 2 is going to be a cup, because that's not true at all. Okay? Caused me many headaches over the years. That's all there is to it. Beautiful, tasty banana bread. Okay? I hope you try it soon. This recipe is great. It's a no-fail. Has a very unique flavor with the mace. All right? Until next time, happy cooking, everybody. Bye-bye.